Thank you so much. So I want to introduce everyone to our moderator from 206 Zulu, Julie C.
Thank you so much, Kitty. Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. Welcome here to we'll be talking about hip hop and activism at the 206 Zulu 15th anniversary party. And as I was going to say, it's an honor to host a panel on this event at an event like this because I feel like all of us in here, which is a small, intimate crowd, but the audience for this particular event, we already have a sort of shared sense of heritage around the radical roots of hip hop. And in many cases, some of the people in this room already embody that in spirit, form, and function. So give it up for yourselves real quick for being here. Additionally, we have this constellation of panelists here, multi-generational, international. And so I would like to go down the line and actually ask if everybody could introduce themselves, if we could hear a name, what you do, what you rep, what's your claim to fame, and what you're most proud of. Because sometimes, as we know, it's not always the same thing. So, Nikkita, would you like to start?
Peace. Good afternoon, family. I'm Nikkita, K.O. Oliver, and what I do, what I rep, I do a lot of things. I'm an artist, I'm an educator, I'm an attorney. Some people will call me an activist. I rep the South End of Seattle. Shout out to Rainier Beach. I rep the Seattle People's Party. I rep Creative Justice, which is an arts-based project that aims to create spaces, healing engaged spaces where young people can challenge and transform the criminal legal system and free themselves from those chains, and we can abolish that whole thing. Am I allowed to curse up here? Okay, because I was going to say abolish that whole shit, but, you know, want to be careful. And, you know, I don't really have a claim to fame in my eyes, but I think what matters to me most, I had a family member tell me that it doesn't matter who you claim as much as it matters who claims you. And there's a lot of young people in this city who I would say claim me. And when I say young people, I mean like 18 and under. And that means a lot to me that the youth of our city claim me as someone that they love and respect, because I love and respect young people and deeply believe in their power to transform the spaces we live in.
Thank you, Aurelio. Yeah, let's give a hand.
Thank you. My name is Aurelio Valdez Barajas. I'm a student. I'm a director. I'm also a hip-hop artist and alumni for a lot of 206 Zulu stuff, so shout out to them. What I rep? Well, I'm from South Everett. You know, it's like a little bit up north of here. I like doing stuff here in Seattle. Thank you guys for having me. What else I like to do? Claim to fame?
Claim to fame, yeah.
I don't know what that means. Like,
Yeah, what are you known for? So what like organizations you work for? You serve a lot. You're super active. So tell us the list of programs you've been involved. Tell us, you know.
I love being involved with 206 Zulu whenever I have the opportunity. Shout out to you guys again. Northwest Folk Life, recently started working with them. Arts Corps, love working with Arts Corps. I'm involved with some student leadership stuff at my university, so proud of that. So, yep.
My name's Aaron Dixon, and I am a writer and a public speaker and organizer. The most significant thing that I've done in my life is join the Black Panther Party, and which I did for 10 years. But I'm also most proud of starting the nonprofit that I ran for 10 years called Central House. And we opened up the first transitional housing program for youth of color. So that's what I'm most proud of. Thank you.
Peace, family. I am JC Rock. This is my nickname in the world of hip-hop. Juan Carlos Enamorado is my name for my D. And Nadia helped me with the translator because this moment I just learning English, and I would like to share how really I can say that things, what I say, what I mind, in my mind, right? So is that Nadia helped me, and I am a activist hip hop and use that cultural hip hop to change our community and give opportunity, create making safe space to share, to development our community, young people, girls, boys. You know, it's nice to be here and just chilling, right?
So I just want to add a little more. He's one of the members of the Zulu Nation in. I'm sorry. It's Warrior Zulu Nation of Honduras. So he's coming all the way from Honduras. And again, so he's one of the members of the first organized organization there. And again, he is focused on creating, him and his group, creating a safe space, creating a space where growth and development can happen for the youth in that area. So. And he wants to make a note that the organization is led by youth and it's for youth. Okay. So he wants to also let you guys know that the community is based off Chamelecon, San Pedro Sula. So he's talking about how the context in that community is what was similar to what was going on in the Bronx in the 70s.
Thank you so much for sharing. So because of this caliber of folks we have in here and folks we have on this panel, I kind of want to take the opportunity to dig a little bit deeper than we might usually in a panel on the topic of hip-hop and activism in more mixed company. And the reason why is because we did a panel on hip-hop activism at Seattle Black Panther Party recently had their 50th anniversary, and that celebration was here. Give it up for that, 50 years, y'all. Nikkita, you organized the Seattle Black Panther Youth Empowerment Summit as a part of those festivities too, I think about a month later in Rainier Beach, and we also had a conversation on hip hop there. And something that emerged in both of those conversations was this concept of hip hop saved my life. Would just real quick in the crowd, people raise your hand if that is something that resonates with you, hip hop saving your life? That's dope, man, that's real. And I think that that's something that we really feel. On the other side of that is this trauma that what needed to be saved from. And so I really want to have this conversation coming from that place. And so I guess maybe that's a trigger warning, maybe it's a little bit vulnerable. Of course, you don't have to dig as deep, you know, only as comfortable as you feel. But I want to ask you here on this panel, what has been sort of the catalysts in your personal story that drive you to want to make this world better? And then we can start from anywhere.
Why y'all push me to go first? Next time I'm calling out Aurelio. You know, I believe in the power of story. We tell stories as a way of handing down knowledge, but stories also get told as a way of sometimes ostracizing people, marginalizing communities. One of the things I think a lot about is the dandelion. And dandelions are often viewed as a weed. And we teach children that a dandelion is a weed. Reality is a dandelion actually has a lot of great medicine for you. You can use the roots to create tinctures that help your body detox. You can use the leaves for food. And a dandelion isn't going to disappear. You can take one up, 3's going to come, 9's going to come, whatever 9 times 9 is, I think is 81. You know, your yard will be full of dandelions. So that's a story that we tell. For me, And what hip hop has done for me, what spoken word and poetry has done for me, what writing has done, is allow me to take stories that other people gave me, dig into them, and rewrite them. When I was 18 and I first moved to Seattle, and I had real encounters with open mics and hearing people tell their stories and take traumatic incidents and rewrite them into something powerful and empowering, I felt like I finally found a way that I could take things that I had felt for so long I had no control over and give them voice or take back control in a way that had not existed for me before. And so when I say things like hip hop or being an artist or writing has saved my life, what I really mean is it's given me the power to understand that I can take a story someone else gave me and I can rewrite it, or I can just write a new story. I'm very inspired by artists like Octavia Butler and Nina Simone, who told us we can talk about the world as we see it, or we can talk about the world we want to build, and we can manifest that through our artistry. And hip hop has taught me how to do that, how to take limited resources, how to be in traumatic environments and say, you know, we want something different, so we're actually going to manifest something different through our sound, through our beat, through our rhythm, through our words, through the power of story. So that's really what that means to me.
Adding on to that, I think what hip hop did for me personally is throughout like most of my life, I've been like really like uncomfortable. As far as like, you know, growing up, I didn't have like the best relationship with my parents. I didn't have like barely like any friends in high school and middle school and stuff like that. What hip hop gave to me though was a lot of like, you know, me being comfortable and me being familiar with like whatever like the artist I listened to, whatever they spoke to, and hearing their stories, like although like different like, you know, circumstances, you know what I'm saying? I really like related to that on a personal level, and something in a way that like I don't think I felt with like any other person, including my parents. And so 11-year-old me was like very like, wow, yo, Tupac, man. He's saying some real shit. Like I was like, yo, this is like really like, you know, hitting me hard. I don't know why. And so just as a listener, like before I even became a writer, I was very invested in like what these artists and like what these breakdancers and what these graffiti artists and what these DJs like were doing out there, not only like for themselves, but also like what they're impacting in the community too. Like I see like a graffiti artist and I'm like, yo, that'd be really dope to do. Or I see a writer, I'm like, you know what, I want to become a writer too. And just so like being that passionate about something is something that never really hit me until I started becoming like a hip hop listener. And so, yeah.
Well, obviously, hip hop wasn't around when I came around, but what we did have was poetry. You know, Gil Scott Heroin, the brothers out of New York, the Watts Writers Workshop, where young people who were angry and who had gone through a lot of things expressed themselves in the poetry that they wrote and the poetry readings that they have. And oftentimes there was music to that poetry. Usually it was jazz. But I started writing poetry when I was in high school because I think when you're young, you know, a lot of times you have a lot of things inside of you that you don't understand. Oftentimes that turns into anger, and you're looking for, you know, you're looking for something to express how you feel. You know, you want to be able to express how you feel inside, you know, and that's why I started writing poetry. And I know that's why a lot of other young people started writing poetry, because we saw a lot of negative things that were happening. You know, the civil rights movement, the bombing of the church in Alabama, and the assassination of Malcolm X, assassination of Medgar Evers, assassination of Martin Luther King, you know, all of these things. And so we had to find some way to express ourselves besides, you know, doing damage to things. So my outlet was poetry. And poetry, you know, me writing poetry, it helped me to kind of like understand who I was and kind of redefine, you know, who I was as a young person. And so it gave me the freedom. It gave me something that I was good at, you know, something that I could hang my hat on, you know, and say, yeah, I can do this. I can write poetry. I can read poetry, you know, and it gave me that self-esteem as well. So, you know, a lot of us in the Black Panther Party were poets, we're artists. A lot of members who joined the Black Panther Party were artists in some shape or form. We wrote poetry, and it is the artists. The artists are the ones in our society. They're like the heartbeat of our society, and they're the ones that kind of that don't let us forget, things that we don't need to forget. So it's very important. And then jumping into the 80s, after I left the Black Panther Party, I started listening to hip hop music, and for the first time, I could identify with what they were doing, because it was the same thing that I did and we did when we were young. And they were expressing, it gave them power, it gave them a voice to express what they saw, what was happening in their community and what was happening in our society. And then, of course, Tupac comes along, and his mother was in the Black Panther Party, Afeni Shakur. I knew Afeni. Afeni wrote a lot of poems that were in the Black Panther Party newspaper as well. So you had a bridging of my generation and the hip hop generation with Tupac, and he was so profound, in the things that he said and the way that he said it. He really inspired a lot of, young people, that's my take.
Okay.
Okay. Gracias. Ok. Para entender cómo inicié, es importante mencionar cómo está Honduras actualmente.
So he's saying that in order to understand how he came to develop his skills, you have to understand the situation in Honduras first.
Y no solamente es de Honduras, es decir, es todo Centroamérica, es casi la misma historia en Centroamérica.
So he's saying it's not just in Honduras, but it's also regionally Central America.
San Pedro Sula es la ciudad donde yo vivo y nuestra organización se organiza, valga la redundancia, en noviembre de 2011.
So he's saying that the organization was founded in Honduras in November of 2011.
Justo en ese momento que nos organizamos, San Pedro Sula era la ciudad más peligrosa del mundo, con mayor cantidad de personas que mueren en relación a la cantidad de gente que vivimos ahí.
So he's saying that at that time, the amount of deaths equaled the amount of the population.
Y ese fue una muy mala fama para la ciudad, que es como de las pocas maneras que nos damos a conocer, lastimosamente de maneras muy negativas, ¿no?
So, and he was saying that at that time, Honduras was known as the most dangerous city in the that city was known as the most dangerous city in the world.
Para más tristeza, no solo fue en 2011, fue hasta 2013 que ocupamos al menos los 3 primeros lugares como la ciudad más peligrosa del mundo por conflicto de violencia de las pandillas, de las gangas.
So he was saying this violence and deaths was lasted till their title lasted till like 2013, where they were either one of the top 3 cities, and it was due to gang violence.
Ahora ya estamos hablando de este año. Bueno, hace 2 años, un conflicto político muy grande, un presidente que inconstitucionalmente sigue en el poder, pero nadie lo votó por él.
So he's saying that 2 years back, they're basically an illegitimate president that took power, and he's still in power.
El nombre de este desgraciado presidente es Orlando Hernández.
And he's saying his name is Orlando Hernandez?
Juan.
Oh, Juan Hernandez.
Tiene mi primer nombre, lastimosamente. Bueno, ¿por qué menciono esto? Sencillamente porque después de las elecciones hubo un caos total, podría decir que muy similar a lo que en el Bronx vivió en los 80s. Es decir, apagones todos los días, saqueos de todas las tiendas, todos los militares en la calle golpeando a la gente. Más de 30 personas murieron solo en un mes por conflicto político.
So he's saying it was pretty chaotic. Chaos is probably an understatement. A lot of people were being dragged out of their homes. There were a lot of police raids, military raids. ¿Cuánta gente murió?
Al menos 30.
So he said at least 30 people died.
Nuestra ciudad tiene 3 peajes, que de hecho no he visto ninguno aquí. Peajes es como si querés salir de la ciudad y entrar a otra ciudad, tenés que pagar en la carretera.
Okay. So he's saying that basically it was so chaotic that in order for you to get to another neighborhood or another town or another place in the city, you had to pay up front to
Es el gobierno.
to the government. So either it's military or the police.
Ya. En este conflicto político se incendiaron los 3 peajes que hay. No quedó ni tan solo un pedacito de bloque de la estructura. La gente enfurecida destruyó todo.
So say that there was such a buildup that people basically ¿qué hicieron?
¿Destruirlo?
They just destroyed the city.
Ahora, en este año, en lo que cierra el año anterior y estamos en este año, al menos 10,000 personas, no, mucho más de 10,000, pero salieron las famosas caravanas de migrantes. Bueno, digo famosas, no sé si se enteraron, ¿no? Pero vienen para Estados Unidos y muchos ya llegaron.
So he's saying that's kind of what led to the caravans. I don't know if you guys have heard it in the news. It's been pretty known. A lot of people just migrating here, and it's a result of the situation over there.
Una caravana que al menos inició con 3,000 personas solo de Honduras reuniéndose en San Pedro Sula y que posteriormente de Guatemala, El Salvador, todo Centroamérica se le unieron hasta llegar a 15,000 personas.
So he's saying it started off in Honduras, where he's from, about 3,000 people. Then it spread to other Central American folks, and it ended up resulting in about 15,000 people migrating up here.
Hace 7 años o 8 años que tuve el primer acercamiento con el hip hop, fue justo el momento en que estaba tomando una decisión, ¿no? De iniciar en la pandilla de la 18 o hacer otra cosa con mi vida.
So he said hace 13 años?
7, casi 8.
So about 7 or 8 years ago, he was kind of in what would you say, kind of like at a point in his life where he had to make a decision, either go into the
18, la pandilla 18.
Pandilla 18, which is the 18th Street Gang, or kind of go in the direction of hip hop. And
Tuve un evento demasiado fuerte que la pandilla me estaba pidiendo que secuestrara a alguien y lo llevara donde estaba el resto de la pandilla y obviamente lo iba a hacer con un arma, iba a tener que matarlo.
so he said it got to a point where the gang was actually requesting him to kidnap someone and to hold them at gunpoint.
Tuve demasiado miedo que no salí como por una semana de mi casa y para esto que afuera de mi casa se reunía la pandilla.
He said it got to a point where he had to just literally like stay at home and not go out because the gang was outside his home.
Realmente lo único que me hizo, aunque sea pensar un poco, fue el hecho de iniciar a practicar breaking gracias a mi hermano y darme cuenta de que todos los problemas que tenía realmente solo había una manera que conocía de poder expresarme, de poder desahogarme y era a través del breaking, a través del hip hop.
So he's saying that his brother is kind of who's the one that kind of introduced him to the breakdancing, and that's kind of where he started to kind of go into that direction.
Ahora bien, yo estoy en San Pedro Sula, Honduras, donde nada de lo que aquí acaban de hablar, nada de estos personajes existe, y cómo tenía que empezar a practicar breaking, obviamente fue a través de videos de YouTube, Wikipedia, you know.
He's saying that there isn't much of a elder or any kind of guidance in Honduras in regards to this type of this connection to music, hip hop, and breaking. And so, what kind of fueled him, his understanding was more the YouTube videos, going online and looking for things.
Y creo que voy a esperar a que vengan las otras preguntas porque si no, no me voy a callar,
He said he's
honestamente.
going to wait to answer more questions. He said, that, yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. Let me give a hand too for JC Rock. It's his first time here, and obviously it's a beautiful opportunity. We love to hear more. So starting from that, I want to go back to the idea of youth-led, right? Your organization, you said, is led by young people. And I want to, obviously, starting from this experience of, how hip-hop has uplifted us from our own personal traumas. Nikkita, you teach creative justice, you run the program, and y'all use the language of trauma-informed mentorship, right? Can you say that correctly or explain a little bit kind of the framework around that?
Yeah, so we talk about it of having a healing engaged space. It's one thing to be trauma informed and acknowledge that people are coming to your space having experienced harmed and things that happen to them might cause them to be triggered or react to things. It's a whole another thing to say that the space that you're building is going to be one where people can heal. We're not just going to respond to the fact that you have trauma, but we actually want to create a space where you can actively heal yourself, be with other people that are healing, and we can heal as a community, which for me is a part of what attracted me to Zulu, is what attracted me to hip hop, is what has attracted me to music and art generally, is that you can create spaces where you can be trauma informed, you can acknowledge trauma has occurred, but you can also create spaces where people can be healed. And that's really what needs to happen. If we're gonna get out of doing harm to ourselves and doing harm to each other, we actually have to recognize that that's coming out of trauma. It's coming out of generational trauma. And for me, as a Black person, my relationship to hip hop is partly tied to wanting something to heal myself and my community, because we live in this fake white supremacist space that's based on capitalism and this patriarchal space that says certain bodies and certain people don't get to exist in their entirety. And what hip hop has created is a space where we can do that. I remember when I was running for mayor of Seattle, and there was a campaign consultant who wanted to tell me I should not wear my kicks to mayoral events. And I had made a conscious decision in my mind that I was going to wear large hoop earrings and kicks because that's who I am. And hip hop had created a space for self-expression that allowed me to be my full self. And what do I look like running to be a part of this system, but I'm not gonna fully express myself? I'm not gonna be the hip hop candidate that I intended to be. So what I found is when you create spaces for self-expression and honest reflection of our history, that's the other thing about hip hop, is the value of knowledge. When we talk about the 5 elements, is knowing where you come from, knowing where the elements come from, knowing that the cipher is based on the drum cipher and the movement of rhythm, and rhythm is healing. You can create spaces where people can become more whole and where communities can become more whole. And that's a part of the medicine that we use in creative justice, is that by creating this transformative healing space, we can do multiple things. In addition to healing, we can create a space where young people can use their voices to tell the criminal legal system, yo, what you're doing to us is messed up. And we actually have the solutions. And by teaching the elements, by teaching artistry, we're also creating a space where young people can develop their vocabulary, their ability to tell their stories, and then speak to the powers that be and say, we have the solutions. Here's what a solution to the criminal injustice complex looks like. We're gonna tell it to you through art. And something that Aurelio said when he was talking was about how it gives you a story you can relate to. And what I've learned is when you tell somebody something through art, you can touch their heart. I can tell you all about the prison industrial complex and all these big academic words, but if I do it through art, if I do it through poetry, storytelling, dance, visual art, it'll stick with you in a different way. And we've actually found that with judges and prosecutors and with legislators, that when they see the art of the young people, something inside of them is transformed. And so they're also healed. And they start to think differently about this system that they're participating in. So I hope that answered your question.
Super. That's really powerful. That's a good segue. I want to go to Aurelio now. Now, Aurelio, you've been a part of several, really, well-known hip-hop programs in Seattle, Beats to the Rhymes that happens here at Washington Hall, in addition to the residency, but also a part of Proxima Generación, from which you're actually a teaching artist now, having been a student, and now you're one of our youth organizers for Youth Rising. Do you want to talk about, like, and this is in a fairly short amount of time, right? Can you kind of give us a glimpse as a young person navigating, you know, what is available to you in this community, what it's been like, and the direction you're going, and how we as adults could be more supportive of that work?
Yeah, for sure. I think the beautiful part about being like on the younger side is I got the energy for it. And I'm like, cause like, I mean, like obviously, like I'm not saying like that older folks don't have energy. I apologize. But more so it's just like, I look at someone like my father, you know what I'm saying? And like how he's been working in construction for like 15 years, and I can see it kind of just like weighing down on him. You know, it's more so like, I love to see my father, you know, protest and like go advocate, you know, and stuff like that. But I know like, realistically speaking, it's very impossible to do, like it's almost impossible so like for that to happen. And so like, because I'm like a full-time student and I got a car, you know, I'm like just like trying to do every opportunity that I can to not only like be invested in the community, but also like have my face like be like like an inspiration for like all the younger folks out there that want to do something like this, and hopefully greater too. And it's like it's incredibly hard trying to balance everything out. As far as like, you know, being like a teaching artist for Proxima Generación and you know, board of directors for Arts Corps, it's like meeting after meeting, and then you know, I want to write and stuff like that. Sometimes you have to like sacrifice, you know, other stuff. Like maybe I haven't seen like a homie for like a week because I'm just like, sorry dude, like I gotta go to a meeting. Oh sorry man, I'm gonna dedicate this day to my writing. Like, and you have to like do that with yourself, or else like you're literally gonna drown, you know, with like so much that well, personally for me, like I'm gonna drown in like, because I just can't handle it all unless I sacrifice either sleep, which is not, I don't recommend it at all, but sometimes it's like it happens, you know. And so going on what Nikkita said too about the beauty of community also is, I remember in my high school I used to like get kicked out of my class for always like freestyling to my friends right there in the little corner that we had. And I was like very petty that I was like, all right, bet I'm gonna take this freestyle and this rap, this cipher to like during like lunch. And there was this like, you know, this kid that like knew how to beatbox. And so like we're just like all in front of the library, and he's beatboxing, and then like I'm rapping, and like other people I didn't even know rap are starting to rap. And then like we just like pulled crowds of like hundreds of people in front of like a library. And like people like I had beef with were like right next to me. They were like, oh shoot, you be spitting. And so like just that alone is such a beautiful thing, because like now we homies, you know, just because of like the power of like community, but also just the power of the cipher and just like hip hop as a whole. So hopefully that answered your question.
So, thank you so much. I have a question. I want to loop back around to this. I love what you said, healing engaged versus trauma informed. The other reason why I wanted to center the conversation today in creating a healing engaged space in acknowledgement of trauma is because Universal Zulu Nation, as a global organization, has recently in the past few years experienced a collective trauma around its historical leadership. And so I wanted to talk to you, Aaron, because the Black Panther Party is probably, you know, the target of the most, how do I even say it, between COINTELPRO and the actions of J. Edgar Hoover, you know, not only just external trauma, but how it played out after that. And I remember reading in your book talking about, you had a quote where you said that you had this sick feeling in your gut when you read about Huey Newton being called a supreme commander. And so I guess I have a lot of ideas floating around in my head about this, but I wanted to create a space where we're acknowledging this collective trauma as an organization, but also like ask from you, having led an organization that dealt with extreme trauma, how do we emerge from that? What are the tools that we need to be learning from the generation before? And you talked about the generational. How can we even deal with these things honestly and transparently in a space where it is still healing necessary, I guess?
Yeah, because most of us who were in the Black Panther Party, emerged from that experience with some degree of trauma, and so it's and we do have a lot of trauma in our society today, particularly in the communities of color, and a lot of our inability to respond to the things that's happening to us. A lot of it has to do with the trauma that we're dealing with. Not only the trauma that we're dealing with, but also what he said is that trying to find the time, because we're in a time period now where everything is sped up. Everything is 24 hours. We don't have any time for contemplation. When I was growing up, you had time to contemplate. You had time to sit down and relax and contemplate things, because there was no 24-hour news, there was no 24-hour sports, there was no 24-hour fitness, there was no 24-hour shopping. None of that stuff existed. I remember on Sundays, my comrade right here, who I grew up with, on Sundays, everything was closed down. All the grocery stores were closed, downtown was closed, except for the movie theaters. That was the Sabbath, that was the time of relaxation for people to have time to relax. And so I think one of the things we have to do is at least slow ourselves down so that we do recognize that we do have trauma. Not only that we have trauma, but that our parents have trauma and that their parents have trauma. The reason why we have trauma oftentimes is because our parents did, and that trauma was passed down over and over and over again. And we have to recognize that. But I have always been trying to find ways to alleviate, the trauma that I have. And it's a constant search, and we all, once we become conscious of it, then we realize that we got to start healing ourselves some type of way. So, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things. Meditation, I've been doing transcendental meditation for about 10 years now, and it has really helped me tremendously in terms of my anger. Yoga is one. Going up into the mountains, into the woods, and just hanging out, just being up in there. I just read this article. It said that when you go up into the forest and you're just hanging around in the forest, that you heal yourself. You heal yourself physically, and you heal yourself mentally. When I was raising my two daughters as a single parent, I used to take them up into the mountains. We used to go to the mountains all the time. And that was the only place that I felt that I could slow myself down, and feel some peace and feel some tranquility and be one with the earth and one with the trees and one with the river. I think searching out the indigenous cultures, the indigenous Native Americans and the spiritual healers that are in some of the tribes in this area, and going to the sweat lodge and listening to the wisdom of the native people is also very healing, So we have to constantly be searching for ways not just to heal ourselves, but to heal our community. And I'm so glad that Nikkita was talking about what she's doing, because we need to have these type of centers all over our community, all over the country, so that we can start trying to heal our young people. Because, the 80s and the 90s, the crack cocaine and the gang epidemic was the most destructive thing since slavery to the black community. It almost brought us to our knees. We went from a point where there were hardly any black kids in foster care to a period in the 80s and 90s when the foster care units were overrun by black kids, and there was nobody to take care of these kids but the system. So, we have to recognize what happened in the 80s and 90s. It just wasn't another decade, it just wasn't It wasn't that, because the CIA is the one that bought all that cocaine into America, and they bought all those guns into America, you know? And so, and then they created the prison industrial complex where we have 2.5 million people in prison. And we have become separated from each other as human beings. When I was growing up, we had a lot of communalism in our community. And we had a lot of passion. We had a lot of compassion. That's what drove members of the Black Panther Party, because we had a lot of passion for the suffering of others. And today, we have become numb, and we've become used to the suffering that we see. That's the only way that we could allow to have people living in tents. 12,000, 13,000, 14,000 people living in tents. In LA, you got 75,000 homeless people, second largest homeless encampment in the world. You got 2.5 million people in prison. How does that happen? 2.5 million people in prison. That's because we allowed it to happen. Because we are no longer connected the way that we used to be as human beings. And I think by learning how to meditate, learning how to do yoga, qigong, and other things, and going out to nature, being one with the earth, we can start reconnecting ourselves so that we can understand that we are all reconnected, that we are all connected as human beings on this earth. You know, we're all connected. Now, how can we let Gaza exist? How do we got 2.5 million people of color in prison here. They got 2.5 million families, mothers, women, children that are in prison in Gaza. How, as human beings, do we allow that to happen? And so trauma is probably the most crucial thing that we have to deal with, not just with ourselves, but with our community and our society as a whole.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask one last question to JC, and then I'll open it up to everybody. Hopefully we'll have time for that. Nikkita, you said something really powerful about hip-hop being this chance, this opportunity or using art, rather, to tell a new story. When we were speaking earlier, you're talking about JC and Honduras, the elements, they all existed, right, but they were kind of separate. And so the work that you're doing in organizing is really building something new, right, and finding this resonance with the origin story of how hip-hop started in New York. But what is the new story? Like, what do you hope to see? What do you hope to build? And then how can we support you here from Seattle and with this international network of people who are trying to do the same?
So he was saying that one of the panelists, other panelists, was talking about a little more in depth about the trauma.
Le pregunto eso a ella, a ver si comprendí. Como les digo, estoy aprendiendo inglés, pero entiendo más o menos. Vamos a poner este contexto. En el conflicto reciente político, toda la gente estaba en una insurrección, no como lo que pasó en Nicaragua.
He said that in that context of what was going on, there was a insurrection of people.
Y bueno, entonces el gobierno, con ese montón de militares que tiene en la calle, llegaban a las casas cerradas donde hay niños de 2, 3, hasta 4 meses de edad y les tiraban gases lacrimógenos dentro de sus propias casas.
So they were the military. What they were doing is that they were breaking down doors and they were throwing tear gas into the homes. And there was obviously women, children, and babies.
Yeah. Y esa es una cosa. La otra cosa, con nuestro crew, con nuestro equipo, porque iniciamos como un grupo de B-Boys and Biggers, llegamos a un momento que éramos alrededor de 50 personas en el grupo y llamamos demasiado la atención en la comunidad. Es decir, la 18 pensaba que nosotros éramos otra mara, otra pandilla, y la MS pensaban que éramos parte de la 18.
So there was a conflict going on because they, obviously as breakers, there was a group of 50 of them, and the 18th Street Gang thought they were part of MS-13, and then MS-13 thought they were part of 18th Street.
Y la misma comunidad pensaba que éramos otra pandilla más que iba a matar gente, que iba a extorsionar, a secuestrar toda esta cosa.
And he was saying that, and then the rest of the community thought they were another gang that was forming, that was going to go out and extortion people, and
Y la policía, obviamente nuestra hermosa fucking policía, pues nos estaba fastidiando cada vez que podía. Nos paraban para registrarnos y nos metían droga en nuestros bolsillos para tener una excusa de golpearnos y llevarnos a matar a los solares baldíos.
so he's saying the police, obviously the corruption, they would implant drugs, they would stop them, implant drugs, and then they would take them to, ¿los llevaban a la cárcel?
No.
No, they would basically torture them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uno de los casos demasiado fuertes fue que estábamos en un entrenamiento, por no haber espacios tan hermosos como este, estábamos en una casa destruida, cayéndose en pedazos, y en lo que estábamos bailando llegó la policía, solamente agarró a uno de nosotros y se lo llevó para un espacio solo y...
Okay. So he said that one time they all got together, but they couldn't get together in a beautiful place like this. They were usually in a home that was either like a building that was dilapidated, and in one instance, they got together and the police showed up and took one of them.
En realidad no estoy seguro si era la policía porque no llegaron con uniformes, no llegaron con placas, no llegaron en patrullas de la policía, llegaron en carros oscuros, blindados, con pasamontaña y solo secuestraron literalmente a nuestro miembro del crew.
So he's not sure if it was the police, but it was people that obviously weren't wearing a uniform. They're wearing all black. They came in dark cars, and they kidnapped one of their members.
Se lo llevaron a lo que nosotros conocemos cañera, que es de donde producen el azúcar que acabamos de tomar allá en el café, ¿no?
So he's saying they took them to a field where they grow sugar.
Y empezaron a molestarlo, a interrogarlo, a golpearlo y todo esto. Y él en un momento de desesperación les dijo, no, yo no soy parte de la pandilla, no soy que no sé qué, yo bailo breaking, le dijo él.
And he said that when these people were interrogating him, he got to a point where he basically mentally broke down and was saying, no, I'm not part of a gang, I'm part of a breakdancing group.
Y le dijeron, en serio, tú bailas breaking, entonces baila, y empezaron a hacerle disparos en los pies para que bailara.
And then their response was they pulled out their gun and they started shooting at his feet so he could start dancing.
Otro caso, un niño de 7, me causa mucha nostalgia lo que pasó anoche, cuando miraba los Little Mousy Monkeys batallando, y esa cosa genial porque nosotros tenemos muchos niños, pero en ese momento un caso muy especial, Gustavo, un niño de 7 años. Que me causó nostalgia ver a los niños bailando ayer porque quiero compartirles una historia de un chico, de un niño de 7 años.
And he said that last night brought a lot of nostalgia because he wanted to share with you guys the story of a 7-year-old boy.
Un chico con un nivel increíble, con un nivel de un b-boy de unos 4 años de entrenamiento duro y tan solo tenía 1 año de practicar.
He said the kid had so much talent. He had the talent of someone who had practiced for about 3 to 4 years, and he had only been practicing for a year.
Su sueño literalmente era como venir acá a Estados Unidos, participar en una Red Bull BC1, ganarla.
He said his dream was to participate in one of the competitions.
Porque él quería, con el dinero que ganara, comprarle la leche a su hermano menor.
Because with that money, he wanted to buy milk for his older brother.
Porque totalmente en pobreza, no tenía cómo vivir,
Disculpe.
Porque totalmente en pobreza, viviendo en condiciones malas y no tenía cómo vivir. Y con el dinero que él ganara, quería mejorar esa situación.
So obviously he was living in extreme poverty, and that with that money, he wanted to give back to his family.
La madre empezó a tener relaciones sexuales con muchos de la pandilla local y tuvieron problemas y tuvieron que huir de donde estaban.
So his mother was involved with having sexual relations with gang members of a gang, and they had to flee that area.
Estuvieron huyendo aproximadamente durante 1 año o 2 años en lugares muy ocultos de Honduras hasta que la pandilla los encontró.
And for about a year, they were hiding in different places, very hidden places, and finally the gangs caught up to them.
Y obviamente mataron a su madre enfrente del niño de 7 años, la cortaron con machete por pedazos.
And when they found them, they cut his mother into pieces with a machete, and the boy obviously witnessed that murder.
Esa es nada más una historia. Hay demasiadas historias de chicos que la pandilla 18 perdió su territorio y tuvieron que huir para las colonias donde vivimos nosotros.
So he's saying that gang lost its territory and they moved in the area where they were practicing.
Niños de 7, 8 años que han visto cómo matan a sus padres o les ha tocado a ellos matar a alguien con cuchillos o armas así.
So there's two traumas going on. He was mentioning that there's kids that are witnessing the violence being done onto others or them being asked to commit violence against others.
Cuando inicié les dije que éramos un grupo de 50, han pasado alrededor de cerca de los 6 a 7 años ya, y de estas 50 personas que están, solamente habemos 3 con vida.
He said out of 50, there's only, out of the 50 in the group, there's only 3 left because of the violence.
Entonces, ese es como el contexto, digámoslo así. Y trauma, ¿cómo no? Tú sabes, en Europa y estos países, no estoy seguro si acá, hablan mucho acerca del problema del plástico.
And he's saying that in Europe and in the United States, there's a lot of issues around plastics.
Pero jamás me atrevería a hablar, por así decirlo, del plástico cuando los niños están pasando esto.
He's saying that that wouldn't be the center of focus if you see kids being murdered.
El sistema de educación es una basura, el gobierno, ya lo dije, es una basura. Y lo único, literalmente, lo único que estos chicos tienen es hip hop, es breaking, es rap, es graffiti.
He's saying that the only thing these kids have is hip hop, graffiti, and breaking.
Como yo lo veo, un chico, un niño o un adolescente en Chamelecón, en San Pedro Sula o otras ciudades del país, tiene una opción, o ser pandillero y morir al año, o bailar y al menos soñar que no muere.
Saying that kids only have 2 options, either to become gang members and either get killed or kill others, or to ¿cuál fue la otra?
Bailar, breaking.
Or breaking or dancing.
Hacer algún tipo de disciplina del hip hop.
Yeah. Or having some type of discipline around hip hop.
Es tan complicado trabajar con esto porque, tú sabes, la policía, la sociedad como tal, tiene estigmatizado el hip hop.
He's saying it's really difficult because there's so much stigma around hip hop in that community.
Cuando el hip hop llegó a Centroamérica, llegó junto con las grandes deportaciones de inmigrantes de aquí de Estados Unidos de regreso a sus países, ¿no?
So he's saying that hip hop really took off when a lot of Central Americans were deported.
Como en los 80 o en los 90.
The 80s and the 90s.
Y con esas deportaciones iban la MS y la 18 también.
And then with those deportations also came MS-13 and 18th Street.
El gobierno de Estados Unidos lo único que hizo fue mandarnos un gran problema a la región, a una región donde jamás hasta la fecha, después de casi 40 años, no estamos preparados a combatir o a resolver este problema.
He's saying that the United States sent us a problem that we would never be able to, at the moment, manage.
Pero la cosa positiva es que no solo iban maras y pandillas a matar y a hacer todas esas shit, también iba mucho hip hop, personas que habían tenido ese acercamiento con lo que estamos hablando aquí en el Bronx, en Estados Unidos.
He's saying that one good thing that came out of the deportations was there's a lot of people who had a lot of love for hip hop and were actually genuine in their work with the community.
Como yo lo veo, digamos, San Pedro Sula está en una etapa muy interesante porque Honduras como tal, es una plataforma donde el hip hop tiene todo lo necesario para trabajar y desarrollarse.
He's saying that there's so much space for hip hop to be developed in Honduras.
Ayer estaban diciendo un dicho, bueno, ya lo hemos escuchado mucho, el hip hop nace de la nada. y crea todo, ¿no?
He's saying that there's a saying over there is that hip hop is born out of nothing.
De la nada hace todo.
And de la nada hace todo, which means comes out of nothing but creates everything.
Yeah. Em, Cuando se le enseña breaking, rap, cualquier elemento del hip hop a un chico, literalmente lo toma de una manera espectacular. Lo toma de una forma. Es la única manera en que puede expresarse. En una sociedad donde todo es violencia, un niño jamás va a decir una palabra ante su padre que tiene demasiados problemas ya. En Honduras la sociedad es demasiado violenta, o sea,
So there's so much violence in Honduras.
entonces un niño, un joven no tiene el espacio para expresar nada.
So there's no space for a child to be able to express themselves.
Solo imaginen un niño diciéndole a su papá, papá, tengo hambre, cuando el papá tiene problemas mayores como velar por la vida misma.
So he's saying that a kid will be like, I'm hungry, but the father is not thinking about hunger, but more about their health and safety.
Entonces, cuando creamos un evento, hacemos un festival, estos chicos a través del breaking expresan todo, a través del hip hop.
So when there's an event, these kids show up and they give it their all.
No es solamente hacer un two-step, es hablar con ese two-step,
It's not just doing the two steps, it's talking with the two step.
es hablar con un six-step. Literalmente el rap no son
Talking with a
palabras,
six-step.
es compartir todo a través de una canción y son canciones demasiado fuertes.
He's saying it's being able to express everything with the music.
Ojo, que si alguien dice algo que no tiene que decir en una canción, lo matan.
So he's saying, like, you have to be aware if you say something that's not,
En una canción de rap, si alguien dice algo fuera de contexto,
if it's out of context, they're cut out.
entonces, como el hip hop es creatividad, tenemos que ser creativos para transmitir un mensaje.
Since hip hop is creativity, we have to come up with creative ways to disseminate the message.
Tuvimos una experiencia muy interesante de un chico que hace 4 años le dimos un taller. Tuvimos una experiencia de un chico que hace 4 años le dimos un taller de breaking.
There was, I'm sorry, I'm getting stuck right now. Sorry, you guys, I'm like.
Okay. Hace 4 años,
So,
sí,
hace-
workshop taller ya.
So hace 4 años, they did a workshop
Yeah.
with a youth.
4 years ago, yeah. And, nunca le pudimos dar continuidad porque no teníamos la forma cómo llegar a él.
There was difficulties in reaching him.
Pero luego en un evento, el año pasado, llegó un chico al Cypher, bailó excelente,
So there was a young guy who showed up, and he showed up to the cipher.
yeah. Y yo me acerqué y le dije, ¿y vos quién sos? ¿De dónde saliste?
And he's like, who are you? Like, where did you come from?
Ah, JC, vos me diste un taller hace 4 años.
He said, oh, you gave me a workshop 4 years ago.
What? ¿En serio? 4 años después de no volverlo a ver, de no volverlo a contactar.
So he says 4 years since they had cut communication.
Y este chico bailaba perfectamente. Este chico sentía, él era la música.
This guy felt the music. He was the music.
Y le pregunté, ¿cómo estás? No, pues ya me alejé de la pandilla y ahora estoy dedicado a bailar.
He said, I stayed away from the gangs and I focused on dancing.
Bueno, la cosa es que nosotros intentamos hacer esto,
So that's our intention.
pero es complicado llegar a una comunidad donde las pandillas solo dejan entrar a quien tiene que entrar,
So it's very challenging when the gangs only let who they want to let in.
pero no todo es malo con las pandillas.
Not
De
every-
hecho, estas pandillas
Not everything's bad with a gang.
en muchos casos tuvimos que reunirnos con sus líderes
In many cases, we had to sit down and negotiate with the gang leaders.
Y nos dijeron, ¿y ustedes quiénes son?
And they asked him, who are you?
¿Qué es lo que están haciendo?
What are you doing?
¿Qué vienen a hacer a mi comunidad, a mi territorio?
Why do you come to our territory?
Y les dijimos, no, solo bailamos breaking, hacemos rap, graffiti, you know.
It's like, all we do, we just break and we do graffiti.
Y estos chicos con un AK-47 y sacos de marihuana y cocaína regado en su espacio,
And these guys carrying AK-47 and the sacks of weed.
¿en serio? ¿Bailan break? A mí también me gusta el break. Y le hice algo así.
And they're like, oh, really? I like break. I break too.
Cuando era chico yo bailaba break también.
And then when I was young, I would break too.
Así que si quieren enseñarle a mi hijo, aquí está, se los mando a llamar ya.
So he's like, if you want to show my kid, you're welcome to.
Estos pandilleros son sicarios. A la edad de 13 años han matado al menos 10 personas.
Many of them that become hitmen, they start off at 13.
Y ahora que tienen 21 años,
And now that they're 21 years old,
que tienen al menos 4 o 5 hijos,
and they at least have 3 or 4 kids,
jamás quieren ese tipo de vida para sus hijos.
these people don't want that same life for their kids.
Y no existe oportunidad para que ellos se reintegren en la sociedad.
And there's no infrastructure in that community for people to reintegrate once they've decided to take that path.
Esta gente nos ha abierto las puertas en las comunidades para que trabajemos de una manera genial.
He said these people have allowed us to come into the community so that we can work on the reintegration.
Así que eso es lo que estamos haciendo.
So that's what we're doing.
Thank you so much for everybody for sharing. We actually are running a little bit too short to do Q&A, but I encourage everybody to, if you haven't already, introduce yourselves to the wonderful people here. And man, I wish we could keep going, but definitely check out My People Are Rising by Aaron Dixon. Nikkita, you just recently put out a poetry book as well, right? What's the name of that one? Pebbles in My Shoes, that's right, Pebbles in My Shoes. And yeah, stay connected. I hope that y'all get a chance to talk to everybody that's here, and we could keep this conversation going on this level, because I feel like it's important work. Right about now, I think we're gonna do a flash transition to the next conversation. And so, is Charms One in the building? How am I supposed to do that? Charms One, what's up? Thank y'all so much.